I am cozy as heck. Coziness, cozy. I'm getting that cozy vibe. It's maybe a touch too cozy. This thing's crazy. I'm never gonna wear it. Oh, shoulder.
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
Hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. Thank you so much for joining me for another podcast episode today. Boy, do we have some stuff to talk about. I have a few finished objects, which I think might be a first that like everything's done at the same time. I could be wrong. It also feels like this happens every time. We have a whip that you've seen before. We have a new cast on, and really we just have a lot to sort of just catch up on and all. Let's all get back caught up to speed here because things have just been shifting so quickly lately. I also feel almost like, you know, that feeling when you've been on vacation for a little bit and you're like, this has been fantastic and all, but I kind of just want to get home to my own bed and eat my own food and like make my own dinner. I'm having that feeling a little bit right now with all the excitement that we've had on the channel lately with Stash Bus Spring and with the 10K celebration and just all that excitement. I'm feeling a little bit like, all right, I'm so excited now for things to kind of just chill out again and let's get comfy. Let's get back to home. So I'm eager to kind of settle in to that today. However, before we settle in, I am still waiting to hear from a few people who had won the giveaway. I'd like to give them at least another week to reach out to redeem their prize. So if your name is on the screen here, you want a giveaway prize for the 10K giveaway. So please be sure to email me at aka because if I don't hear from you within the next week or so, I'm going to have to choose some new winners. I just want to make sure that all these prizes get out to, the people who won them. So if your name's on the screen, please do reach out to me. And otherwise, I think we should go ahead and just dive on in. Let us go ahead and start with the obvious finished object in the room. I am wearing today my Feelgood cable sweater by Anne Catherine Stoll. I knit this sweater out of Barocco Ultra Wool Chunky in the colorway Wheat. And just this morning, I sat and weaved in some of the ends, not all of them, but a few of them, and it just came off of the blocking mats today. So today is the official final day of this project for now. Let's talk about some of the journey of this sweater, and then we're going to talk a little bit about my honest feelings on the finished object. So to begin, I have been working on this sweater for a total of 45 days. So over a month, I've been knitting on this rather chunky sweater. It was knit up on 6mm needles as the pattern suggested. I never did a gauge swatch, so I will do my best to check before editing this video if my gauge was close and let you know kind of how that was. I also never blocked this along the way, and so the fit was a little bit of a mystery. That being said, I did begin knitting this sweater. It's a drop shoulder sweater, so starting with that back panel, picking up for the fronts, and then you knit down to the end of the V-neck, to the bottom of the underarm, knit your way down, and then pick up for the sleeves, knit those. All of the hems, so the sleeve hems and the hem of the sweater are finished with a rolled stockinette edge. And then the back of the sweater in the pattern has an I-cord edge to finish that. And the front of the V-neck is intended to just be a raw hem. However, I decided to modify the pattern slightly, and I also added the same I-cord edge to that V-neck. I started this in the size medium. However, I felt like the medium wasn't giving me the real oversized look that I was hoping for this one. And I really wanted this to be my just ultimate cozy sweater. So I wanted something that truly was just big, cozy, oversized. And so essentially when it came time to like stop increasing for the medium size, at that point I made the executive decision to jump up to the size large. Now, that meant the difference between the cables, basically between the difference between the medium and the large is the difference between ending after this cable and ending after this cable. And I feel very torn. I really do believe that if I had knit the medium, it wouldn't be quite as oversized as I really did want it to be. However, having knit the size large, when I got to the underarm, I didn't realize how many stitches you were told to cast on. And so I did wind up modifying it so that I did not cast on nearly as many stitches as the pattern had suggested under the arm, which meant that the sides are supposed to have these wide panels of just stockinette going down, and I don't have that. I have a very small sliver, I believe 5 stitches across of a little stockinette stripe coming down the sides of mine. And because of that, my goal was for this to fit somewhere in between the size medium and the large. Again, I do think I could have gone for the medium and it would have felt a little bit too small for the coziness that I wanted, but then that large really was just too big. And so the in-between, I already know that there's going to be people who say like, it's just way too big, but I really wanted something so oversized and cozy. Now, in doing that as well, the sleeves are intended to have these really big bell sleeves. You see them in the pattern. And they're done just in a straight sleeve, but they also include that very wide stockinette panel. Because I didn't have that, I started my stockinette panel with the 5 stitches that I had done in the body, and then I increased until just about the point where I would have the amount of stitches around the sleeve as she does in the pattern. And so I really do love the sleeves, and I think that they're at a great length where when I put my arms kind of up and out, they're really big, and so I wouldn't want them like hanging over me too much. I like that I think they're the perfect length. So that's really great. Now, I think where I went awry a little bit is I 100% should have blocked this before I ever finished it. It is superwash yarn, which I don't have a ton of experience with. I know people say that it tends to really stretch out in blocking, and the only time I've worked with superwash before, I didn't experience that at all. And I had anticipated that amount of like, it's gonna grow like crazy in blocking, and then it didn't, and I was kind of disappointed. So I didn't get my hopes up for for that in this one, and boy oh boy, can you tell from before and after blocking just the way that this like unfurled itself. And I think that there are 2 things I should go back and change in order to be happy, 100% happy with the sweater. Right now, I am cozy as heck. We're experiencing a really chilly summer day today here in Connecticut, and this is exactly what I want it to be. I'm actually really eager to get outside and knit a little bit in my new cozy sweater when I'm done filming today, so I'm getting that cozy vibe. However, the length, I really wanted to use all of the yarn that I had, and I did, and I think that that was overkill. I think it's way too long. I think that I could probably lose about 7 inches if not more than that, off of the hem. And it would still be a very oversized, comfy, cozy sweater. And the thing is that I know that with wear, it's only going to get kind of longer. And it's truly, it would be passing in a high school for like the fingertip test for a dress. So it's maybe a touch too cozy by those standards. But I don't know that I'm going to rush into doing that. And that's also why I chose not to weave in all of the ends yet, because I didn't want to go and weave in all of the ends just to make these modifications. So I wove in the ends that were necessary, or that I knew were like definitely set in stone. And then I've left a lot just so that I can go back and make those changes. It's going to be a very simple fix. To just rip back and then reknit the stockinette rolled hem. So it won't take very long at all. And I'm thinking that I'm going to try to just wear this around the house a little bit and maybe pop in a stitch marker, like exactly where I think the length should hit. And I'm going to try wearing it with leggings as well as with jeans, just so that I can make sure I'm getting the maximum, like versatility out of it. Now, the other thing is that, like I said, I did modify the V-neck here. That's supposed to just be a raw hem. I added an I-cord edge, and because I had just added that on myself, there was no pickup rate or anything like that in the pattern. And I believe I wound up picking up about 4 out of every 5 stitches, and I think that was too many. So you can kind of tell that it's not doing anything for me structurally. It's actually, I would say, even I picked up a few too many stitches for sure. So I think another quick fix is going to be to just rip out this I-cord. I also had knit it on the same needle size, so that 6mm needle. I also knit the I-cord in the same as the rest of the sweater. And so I'm thinking I should drop down maybe to a 5mm needle and then go through and pick up maybe 2 out of every 3 stitches. And so I'm picking up less stitches, and then in blocking, I would have to kind of pull it taut. And the goal then is that it really will kind of cinch things up and just give this all a bit more structure. Because as you can see right now, I mean, it's just such a huge V-neck. I am happy to wear it off my shoulder a little bit, but even still, it's just like kind of too much. It looks really crazy. Like, I don't need quite this much. And the issue too is that then if I do want to wear it just straight, it's literally like, it's no. That's just too deep a V for me. So first things first is going to be to do that I-cord, and I'll probably just go back and kind of steam block that to make sure that that is sitting okay, because that's also most likely going to just kind of cinch this up a little bit, so it should sit like the littlest bit closer, and therefore the hem will be affected by that too. So at that point, I will decide exactly what length I want this sweater to be. But honestly, sitting in it right now, I'm cozy as heck. And so I can't even be mad about the whole thing. I would love to give you a breakdown, because as I'm saying that out loud, I feel like I have the flexibility with this project to say, like, it's good, it's not great, because of the deal I got on this yarn. I also am pretty comfortable at this point in my knitting journey that if at the end of the year I'm like, this thing's crazy, I'm never gonna wear it, I won't have an issue just ripping it out and knitting something else out of this yarn. I enjoyed the knitting experience a lot on this project. I really loved knitting up the cables and the rest of it, the chunkiness. It was a very comfortable, cozy knit. So I feel nothing was lost if I don't wind up loving this sweater, but I do definitely want to give it its best shot. And so I will make those changes. I don't know that I'm going to do it right away, because there's a lot I'd like to get through this summer in knitting, but we'll see. Maybe I will just try to attack this. I'm not sure yet. So let me pull up my spreadsheet here so I can give you the final breakdown for this project. So this pattern, it's called the Feelgood Cable Sweater. That's by Anne Catherine Stoll. The pattern price on Ravelry, I paid $8.19 for this one. And I did purchase this specifically to knit it. It was not in my library and it wasn't gifted. The yarn that I used, like I said, is that Barocco Ultra Wool Chunky in the colorway Wheat. I'm saying it was in my stash, but I bought it specifically to knit this. So it's not something that was just kicking around in the stash. So I'm going to say it was not in my stash. I did purchase this to knit this sweater. It just took me a little while to get to it. And for this yarn, the typical full price per skein is $12. And I purchased this at a local yarn shop that was going out of business. So they had a huge sale on yarn. So the price that I paid per ball was $3. So it was really a big sale that I got this yarn for. Now, I do have to weigh this. Let me pop off camera real quick and I'll weigh this so that I can really give you the full stats for this one. One moment. So I used a total of 1,154 grams of yarn to knit this sweater. And that means that I tapped into the 12 balls of yarn that I purchased, which means that had I bought the yarn full price, this project would have cost $144. But because I got it on that really crazy sale, I only spent $36 on the yarn for this project. And because there were no additional expenses, my project total, so the yarn plus the pattern, wound up being $44.19. Whereas had I purchased that yarn at full price plus the pattern, the full project would have been $152.19. And that was all for a project that took me 45 days to knit up. I feel like for the price of this yarn and everything, it's such low stakes as considering the size of the sweater. I think that $40 or so is a really good price for the pattern and the sweater and just all that. And for the sheer size of this, I'm very happy with that. So yeah, there's a few tweaks that I have to make. I'm not mad about it at all. I do feel like what was I just going to say? Oh, the knitting experience on this yarn. I had mentioned that the superwash gave me kind of acrylic vibes, and I do kind of still stand by that. I don't think it's terrible, but I think personally I might just be someone who prefers the feel of 100% wool without the superwash. And I could be wrong. I'm still kind of new at, all of this. So I'm not totally sure yet, but knitting it up, I did get just that slight little squeak factor that I don't love, but I didn't mind the yarn. And for the price, again, can't complain really. And then the way that the yarn blocked, I just think was so lovely. The drape I got in the end is just so nice. This did take a few days to dry, even though I dried the bejeebies out of it with towels and stuff. And I have now a dehumidifier in the room of things when they're blocking, but still it took a few days for it to dry. It's just such a behemoth, but I think I just think it looks really cozy and really like luxe loungewear. Although this brings me to another point that I wanted to mention. So I went out and I bought this little like top to wear under it because I think that that's kind of the look that she has in the pattern photos, which is what I fell in love with. But I think I'd like to throw this little PSA out there, and I'd like to, someone please remind me of this if I ever go down this rabbit hole again. These sweaters that are really oversized and cozy with the V-neck, they look so good in photos. But I feel like this might be the most impractical sweater ever in life. Because I don't know when I would ever, what situation calls for a sweater this size, this like cozy and big and comfy with the sleeves that you can't like wash dishes in, but then you're like, oh, shoulder. Like if I'm chilly enough to warrant this size and just beast of a sweater, I feel like I want my neck to be covered. So I need to learn that. I've felt that way with my other V-neck pullover sweater that I'm like, it's really cozy and cute, but it's really impractical. That being said, the idea here was like summer sweater, beach nights. Not that I've literally ever been to the beach. Like I think sometimes when I'm picking out projects, I need to remember the life I want to live and the life that I do live. And the reality is that like we don't spend our nights walking down the beach. So as perfect an occasion that would be to wear this sweater, like maybe I should think about that in the future. So yes, just keep that in mind. If you love the look of these V-necks and stuff, but you also live somewhere where like when you're wearing it's either like hot or cold. If you're wearing a sweater, it's chilly. You probably want your chest covered. If you're, not wearing a sweater, it's just too warm for that. So this looks adorable. Will be great for a nice Instagram photo. Makes no sense in real life. But I will get wear out of it in the fall and stuff. It's just not the most practical thing. But sometimes you need a little impractical knit just to enjoy the process of it. These sleeves are that. But again, I really like that because it is just the rolled hem. I can just like kind of flip these up and not care about them if I had to suddenly get something done. So I can't be mad at that either. I really do love it. There's a few tweaks it needs. We'll see when I get to them, but I'm calling this one done for now. So that is the Feelgood Cable Sweater by Anne Catherine Stoll. As I say, I'm going to go ahead and remove that from my little count up thing. Hey. Here we go. All right, 45 days, delete. Beautiful. All right, now I do have multiple finished objects today, and yet like none of them are actually done. So with this, it's like it's done, but it needs some help. And then the next one is done, but needs buttons. Yay! The Claire vest is done. Oh, she's so pretty. This is the Vest Claire by Mochi Knits. I knit it up out of Nora Asaginu. It's color 16. The yarn is a blend of Japanese paper and French linen. And every time I've said that, I've just felt like the fanciest girl in the whole world. So it is done. Also, it's on my little hanger, and a few people said that we need to name our hanger situation, which I think we should too. I have yet to figure out something to actually keep the knits on there, so my shirt is still just tied to it. But I think we should name her. So if you guys have ideas for names for our little hanger friend, I was like Hannah the Hanger. That's just who I am. It's always alliteration, but you guys tell me what we should name her. I thought too it'd be fun to put like OC's face on it. You let me know. Anyway, this is the Vest Claire Mochi Knits. Oh my God, I'm obsessed with this. When we spoke last, I still had a few inches of the body to do. So let me run you down the things that happened in order to complete this since we spoke last. So this vest is knit from the top down, starting with that back panel. Again, there are short rows worked into the back for that shaping. There are short rows worked in the front panels, and then you knit the increases in the V-neck, work your way down until you reach just about 2 inches from the hem, where you do some decreases to give it just this pretty little opening at the bottom, like a typical waistcoat would have. And the armholes are finished with a stockinette that is folded and then with the crochet hook kind of sewn down using a slip stitch. And what's interesting is that the actual slip stitch detail happens on the wrong side of the fabric. So on the right side of the fabric, you're getting the bars behind the slip stitch. So it really looks like it was just sewn down perfectly. Then the whole front is finished with, I think that was an I-cord. I'll talk about everything in a second, but yeah. Then, so since last week, I did the decreases in the front, bound off with an Icelandic bind off. That was new to me. And I had to do that I-cord. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I also had the other armhole still to do. So a lot got done here, but I have to tell you, I feel like I'm sounding like a broken record with this one. The pattern, the way it was written, stellar. 10 out of 10. recommend. The details of this pattern, I know what you're thinking. I could go find a little vest to knit anywhere, but every part of this pattern was exciting and interesting and stimulating, and yet nothing was difficult. It was all just kind of a little new, a little different. It was just those little detailed finishes that I love so much. The decreases at the bottom, the way that they're done so that you still have a little border of stockinette, it looks really like it could be a folded edge. It's kind of hard to tell. It just looks really clean. The Icelandic bind off I had never done before. And it's been a long time since I learned a new bind off, right? I've only done your standard just knit over knit bind off. That's how this one was finished. And a Italian tubular bind off. Those have all become very much second nature to me. So when I saw Icelandic bind off, I was like, oh shoot, I have to learn something. It was time consuming, but it was really, I liked it. It was fun. On the paper yarn, it was a little bit tricky because this yarn has no give. There is no stretch. There is no bounce back. So you have to make sure that whatever you want the tension to be, it has to be that while you're knitting it. You can't bind off too tight and then stretch it. Likewise, you can't bind off too loose and hope that it evens out in blocking. That is not a thing here. So it was very deliberate the way that I had to do this Icelandic bind off. I had done the first probably 10 stitches and saw that my tension was a little wacky and I had to kind of undo it and then start back over. But once I got it, I think it looks just so pretty. It almost appears as like a tiny little reverse I-cord or something. You're seeing the back and like the purl bumps, but the way that you're knitting it, it's just your 2 needles. There's not like another sewing needle that comes in like an Italian tubular bind off would have. None of that, but you're sort of knitting a stitch and then slipping it back to your left needle and then kind of working through that stitch to the next stitch in order to then bind things off. It's very fascinating. I really enjoyed it once I got the hang of it. Took a while. I did have to take some breaks because, again, the paper yarn, with the lack of give, I was like really holding that yarn taut to make sure I got it just right. I also wound up dropping my needle size down. This whole project is done on 3.5 millimeter needles, and I dropped down to a 3 millimeter needle for the bind off because the Icelandic bind off, everyone says it has lots of stretch. I felt like I was getting, again, just too much because of my yarn. I don't think that would be necessary for a typical wool or anything like that. I think that was just a particular problem I was having, but I made it through that. And then this little tiny I-cord, but from the wrong side thing. I don't know exactly what it was, but I loved it. And that flew. And it's just these little clean finishes that made all the difference. Now, in doing the I-cord, she tells you to pick up all of the edge stitches that you have and then tells you how many stitches to pick up on the back of the neck. Now, I had just watched a podcast from String Things by Mel, who just knit up the same Claire vest, and she was talking about the back of the neck and how in the pattern, Mochi Knits tells you to do the I-cord on the back edge tightly, because otherwise you can get this kind of flaring out in the back. And again, with my yarn situation, I felt like that was something I had to be particularly aware of. So The other thing was that on my edges, I had mentioned this before, but you always slip that last stitch when you were working the back and forth. And what I found was that when I slipped my purl stitch and then went to the first knit stitch of the next row, those stitches wound up being significantly tighter than when I had slipped the last knit stitch and then purled the first of the round. Those were way looser. So because of that, I was feeling like, which side would that be then? So my right side was feeling a little bit too snug and a little more cinched in because that was the side that had those little tighter stitches. Yes. And then the left side where the last stitch was the slipped knit stitch, it was a little bit looser. And going into the I-cord, I had all of that information in the back of my head. So I made a few little tweaks to how I approached it. She tells you to knit that whole I-cord edge on 3.5 millimeter DPNs, the same size you've knit the rest of the garment with. I decided, and you start with the left side, so my loose side I started with. So what I decided to do was actually begin with a 3.25 millimeter DPN and try to cinch up the loose side a little bit with the I-cord. When I got to the back of the neck, I read how many stitches she says to pick up. I actually wound up picking up a few less, and that was just what happened, and it looked fine, so I kept going with it. But also, she says to knit it tighter, but doesn't tell you to drop down a needle size. Knowing my situation, I did drop down a needle size. So I knit the loose side, trying to cinch it up on 3.25 millimeter DPNs, then switched to a 2.75 millimeter DPN across the back to get a really tight I-cord. Then I pulled out the 3.5 millimeter DPN to knit down the right side I-cord because that was the side that was already too tight and I didn't want it to be any tighter. And I'm a little shocked that it all worked. I think that doing that really did help to even out the tension. You could see in the before and after blocking shots how the back of the neck does sit pretty well. On the hanger, it almost looks like it's cinched in and kind of funny, but it sits really nicely on the body. So if you are knitting this, I would maybe say just drop down your needle size on the back of the neck because I figured I'd rather it be a little too tight rather than too loose. I didn't want that thing where it like kind of just stuck out in the back. Those were the only little modifications I really made other than for this whole garment. I knit it in the size extra large, but I did make some mathematical tweaks because my row gauge was off by 5 stitches per 4 inches. So in a 4-inch swatch, her gauge was 25 stitches by 37 rows, and my gauge was 25 stitches by 32 rows. So I did make a lot of math modifications just to make sure that my garment was about the same dimensions as the one in the pattern. In the end, I think it fits perfectly. I will say that there's one thing I think that could have happened with this knit to make it just a little bit better. And it's possible that it's just the way that my fabric sits and on my body and all of that, but I did feel like I was so happy with the length in the front, and I am so happy with the length in the front, but the back feels like it sits a little bit too low. So I would even consider if I were to knit this again, when it comes time to start the decreases for that bottom of the V in the front, I would maybe do that in the way of short rows or something. Do it in such a way that the back, instead of sitting straight across at the hem, instead kind of comes up a little bit and then down. I think that this could be achieved by almost just knitting separately each side for the fronts when you start those decreases, so that you're kind of working from like the center back to the front, doing that decrease, coming back and not working back quite as far to the front, doing the decrease, coming back not as far to the front, so that eventually you're kind of just sloping off the back. And make sure then that the last points that you're kind of hitting is what would be like the side seam, even though there aren't seams, just whatever that kind of side point is. Then doing the other side, and then doing maybe just the last couple of rows to kind of resolve all of those short rows. I think then from the back, this would just sit a little bit better. Again, it could just be me. It could be the weight where it was hitting me on my body, and just so many different variables. But that was the one thing that I was like, oh, if it had just that one little detail, I would be even happier with it than I already am. That being said, I'm so happy with it. So I did block this by steaming it. This yarn says dry clean only. And I do have a gauge swatch that I said I would kind of put through the ringer to see what it's, what I can really put it through. I thought that I was going to be short on yarn, but I'm not at all. I have more than enough left over. And so I think I will just go ahead and throw the swatch into to soak for a little bit and block it wet, just to kind of see what happens. Maybe throw it in the wash or something, just to find out how durable the yarn is. But I plan to be pretty precious about this little baby. And I'll probably steam and dry clean when necessary. So that's okay with me. I just think it's so pretty and so delicate, and I feel very pretty when I wear it. It's another one that I had to purchase a specific undergarment for, so there's that. I did say originally that I would probably wear something just kind of nude underneath, but I actually really liked the idea of pairing it with a nice chocolatey brown bralette, and that's what I did. And I think it looks pretty cute with a pair of high-waisted jeans, so there's not like a ton showing. Now, the only thing is that it doesn't have buttons on it yet, and so that's why you probably notice it does just have stitch markers, which means that when I put the buttons on, the idea is that the fronts are actually going to be touching. So there's about an inch of skin showing right now because I just have stitch markers holding it shut. That won't be there. I don't like that. That would make me feel very uncomfortable. You're welcome that I'm sharing that view with you. But for like regular wear, it's going to be shut in the front. So really you're just going to be seeing more of like the sheer kind of through the stitches and the bralette. And so I think it's nice. I think it's fine. Buttons. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole. So if you know anything about me, you know that I'm very picky about a button. I just can't ever find the buttons that I love the most. And I've been looking and looking and looking, and then so I started thinking, what if I had done like a clay glazed button? And I was like, that could be maybe what I'm kind of picturing. Started looking around, still couldn't find anything in like the color that I wanted. When I remembered that, like any normal person, I have a full tub of air dry clay in my craft room. And I was like, could I just make my own buttons? So I did a 2-minute Google search and obviously feel very confident moving forward with this endeavor. And if you're on Instagram and follow me over there at akanoraknits, you may have seen that I'm experimenting a little bit. I threw together some buttons. I did different shapes and sizes and was kind of finding my groove as I went along. I already had this stuff, so I've got nothing to lose here. It's still drying, but my thought is, from what I Googled in literally 2 minutes, maybe once those air dry, I could paint them. And then I saw that you could even just use like nail polish to sort of glaze them. I figured I'd give it a shot. And at the very least, it was a fun little crafty project. And at the best, I can make my own buttons. New world unlocked. I'm going to keep you posted. Like I said, it's been humid, so they're still drying. But we will see. I also feel like if it works out, but the air dry clay is too fragile, I'll go try the like oven baked clay. I don't know. I feel like I've really found a new rabbit hole to dive down and I'm pretty excited about it. However, in the meantime, I did say that I had purchased some buttons on Amazon and I just didn't love the color of them or the shiny plasticiness of them because they are resin buttons. And the color of them, it's called coffee. And so I was picturing something a little bit warmer, whereas the true color of them is a little bit more of a grayish brown, a little cooler toned than I would have preferred. Not to mention the fact that it looks very plasticky and very fake. And so I didn't love that up against the beautiful organic paper. It just, the juxtaposition looked funky to me. And then I realized that the back of those same buttons, I'm trying to say buttons because people don't like when I say buttons, but I say buttons. The back of the buttons are about the same dark brown color as the vest. And I think if nothing else, that's showing me that I really like that dark brown color. So if my clay buttons don't work out, I'm probably going to throw these ones on backwards until I figure out a more permanent solution. So my goal is to be wearing this next week, either with these dark buttons or with ones that I've made or ones that I found, and we'll just see how this goes. She also gives you the option to do the tie front in the front for this vest, but I don't know, it wasn't doing it for me. I really fell in love with the original photo of like the heaviness of the button with then the sort of sweet little vest. I really liked that combo. So we're on a button journey, but I'm very excited about it. I'm really hoping that my little air dry clay buttons work out. So if you have any experience with that too, please let me know, tips, tricks, anything you got, because I have I've tapped into something that I never considered before, and I'm very excited about it. So yes, that is the Claire vest. I'm also saying that this is done only because the buttons could be like a lifelong journey of trying to find the right ones. And I'm just kind of waiting on those ones to dry. If not, I have the ones. So I'll be wearing this next week, no matter what. So it is done to me. And so let's also quickly run down the spreadsheet for this guy. So the pattern is called Vest Claire by Mochi Knits. I also paid $8.19 for this pattern. It was not in my library. I did purchase it specifically to knit with this yarn, which was the Nora Asagi Nu in the colorway 16. That was not in my stash. I went out and I purchased that yarn for this project specifically. Full price, the yarn is $15 a ball, and I bought this on sale at Webb's America's Yarn Store. So the price I paid per ball was $8.29, and I wound up tapping into a total of 4 balls, which also means I have about 1.5 left over plus my swatch. So if you have ideas for my leftover single ball of this yarn, like please let me know. I don't know what I could use it in. What's a small accessory that would use up that amount of this paper yarn? Please let me know. So that being said, the full price yarn total, so had I purchased those 4 balls of yarn at full price, would have been $60, but because I got it on sale, I paid $33.16 for the yarn. Additional expenses include the buttons. Let's just say that I'm using those Amazon buttons, which I purchased for $8 on Amazon, which means that had I purchased everything at full price, so the yarn plus the pattern plus the buttons, I would have paid a total of I have to math on the spot here. Hey Siri. So for all of that full price, the total, no, goodbye Siri. Cancel. The total would have been $76.19. However, because I bought that yarn on sale, I paid a project total of $49.35. And that was all for a project that stayed on the needles for only 21 days. Not bad at all, huh? Again, a good price for such a luxurious project. I'm going to delete that now from my counting timer or my count up calendar. And yes, I think fair price for a luxurious garment. Certainly more than I would spend for a vest. I think I've bought little vests for between $20 and $40, so not far off. And considering the makeup and everything, and that $8 of that are just the buttons, not bad. Not bad at all. I'm very happy with this project. I don't want to sound like a broken record. I just think such a great project. Such a great project. If you try this project and love it, please let us know. If you try this, let us know. But also, if you decide to knit it and you try those short rows, I would love it if you would email me or message me or let me know how that goes for you, because I do feel like that might be the one thing that just takes it up a notch. But another one that's like a 10 out of 10. Absolutely obsessed, in love with. That's the vest Claire. For the final finished object that's not really finished, we have my Tulsa cami. This is the Tulsa Tank pattern by Rebecca Clow. I knit mine with the Tulsa cami front and then the vest back. The only reason this is not done is because it needs to be blocked. As soon as I finish up here today, I'm going to toss this guy in the bath because it just, I didn't get to block it because this was literally taking up all of the space I had for blocking things all week. But I finished both of these, the knitting, on the same day. So this is done with the knitting. If you're new to this saga, I had already finished this project before. I knit it in the size 4. I used 4.5 millimeter needles. However, the first time I finished it, I had done the bust shaping. And after trying it on, I realized that I did not need the bust shaping. So I ripped all the way back to before the bust shaping really started and then knit it up again without the bust shaping. How many times can I say? In doing so, I also shortened the straps a little bit and tried to lengthen the body a little bit to make up for it. In doing so far before blocking, I feel like all those changes really did what I needed them to do. And now the only thing left to do is, like I said, block it and then decide if I want to add any finishes. It is written, the cami version is written to not have any finishes. The vest version is written to have a ribbed edge. I'm thinking if I do decide to do any finishes, why am I have latched onto these words, then it will be I-cord edge, the way that it's done in the Sailor Swift top by Veronica Lindbergh. I would do that the same way. I just really like the I-cords and that pattern. However, trying this on the second time, it doesn't feel as necessary to do the I-cord edge. So we'll see how I feel after blocking. I think the only thing that's actually really making me believe I'm probably going to wind up doing it is just because of the way that the back kind of looks, which wouldn't really bother me if I didn't want to wear this in a reversible way. I think it looks nice both ways, so I don't want to miss out on that just because I'm not in the mood to knit the I-cord edge. I actually like knitting an I-cord edge. This one I've knit up in, it's a brand called Wool Service. And the yarn is called Alina. It's a mercerized cotton. I can't find it on the internet anywhere, but that is what I knitted up in this most beautiful, grapey, like red wine stain color. And you can see probably here that where I've knit it now the second time totally needs a good block. It's interesting how much the stitches really tidied themselves up with blocking, especially, I mean, this was all then knit with already knit on yarn, so it had that squiggliness to it. So this is done, but I will save it for next week to be done because we might still have to add an I-cord and such, and it does need to be blocked. So I will save the spreadsheet for this one for next week when it truly is done, when we really know how much I've done on it. And as of now, it's been on the needles for 32 days. Not bad at all. So let's breeze on past that. I feel like it's just been here for a while. So yeah, that's what I got done over the past week. Speaking of Tulsas, let's go ahead and just quickly breeze past my other Tulsa. This is the fingering weight version of the same pattern by Rebecca Clow. As they're all knit bottom up, I haven't yet decided which neckline I'm going to finish this one with. This is my sock knitting, this is my handbag knitting, my purse knitting, and so we're just going to inch along. All I want to do today is move my progress keeper, which is right here. So let me measure. It looks like I've done maybe 1.25 inches. Would you look at that? 1.25 inches. So let's move the progress keeper. Still, this is nowhere near being done, and it's not going to be exciting until we get to the underarm split. But this is also the lowest priority knit of all of them. I'm knitting this up on 2.5mm needles, and I am also knitting this one in the size 4, though I did not do a gauge swatch. So who the heck knows what this is going to be? All I know is that it's kind of mindless knitting, and that's all it's meant for. It's been on the needles, though, for 25 days today. And for the last little bit of excitement here, we've just kind of morphed into whips. So this is my new cast on. If you saw my summer knitting plans video, you will know that I was planning to, and eagerly planning to, knit up the, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to try my best on this one, clematis? Let's say clematis. We'll just let it roll off the tongue. The Clematis Vest by Emma Knits. This is a vest, which this is my year of the vest. So it is a vest that has a diagonal button placket on it that I just think is so sweet and an original enough little detail that I'm really excited to make it for my little capsule summer work wardrobe. And I am knitting this out of a new to me yarn, which is the Sandnes Lena. That's their linen cotton viscose blend yarn, and I'm knitting it up in black. I just cast on yesterday, which this is what we have. This is going to become my new high priority knit over the next couple of weeks. I'd like to get this done ASAP so that I have at least a little bit of time to wear it before it gets truly too chilly out. Though I guess I could always wear it as a vest. We'll have to see when it's done. Now, I did do a gauge swatch for this project, and my gauge is off only by a couple of stitches. I've learned that in my gauge swatches, I'm not pinning them, I'm not stretching them at all. And so I'm wondering if those 2 stitches that I'm off gauge by would be just a matter of a little when it is done and blocked. The issue here is that I fall perfectly into the size large for this pattern. That is my exact bust size and the exact fit that I want. And the way that my gauge is in the swatch means that I would be knitting this slightly smaller. But then if I jump up to the size extra large, I'm nervous I'm going to get too much positive ease. Being that it is the linen viscose cotton, I also anticipate with some weight and some wear, it will grow a little bit. So I'm erring on the side of it being a little too small rather than too big. This always happens where I just wind up being like right in between the sizes, and I just have to kind of, deal with it when I get there. So I figured, let me start with the size large, and then maybe similarly to this pattern, when push comes to shove of like, this is where the instructions for the size large end and extra large begins. At that point, maybe I could try it on and kind of just double check everything. Or maybe it's a matter of just when I block it to give it that little extra stretch. I'm knitting this on the recommended needle size, which is a 4mm needle. And I don't have really anything else to say about it right now. Let's put a progress keeper on here. So far, the only thing I feel like I want to mention is that in the pattern, the pattern file is interesting. It's written in a horizontal file. And so instead of having 1 page of instructions on like 8.5 by 11 thing or like an iPad screen sized piece of paper, it's horizontal and then there's like columns. And so I'm just struggling a little bit to even like see the pattern. I don't know. That's might just be a me thing. I'm sure I'll get used to it. I'm just not used to it right now. So that's the only thing. But really, you just start out by knitting straight, flat. So another hit the ground running type knitting project. If you need to cast on something right now that's just straight across knitting, here's another one like the Stripe Hike by Veronica Lindbergh that you just start out by knitting. There's nothing shaping, nothing. You're just knitting however many inches she tells you to for your size and the pattern. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I'm very excited to see the construction of this whole garment. And yeah, that's the Santa Scarlina. So I literally just cast this on yesterday. And that's all I have to say. So with that being said, those are my whips. So we've really whittled down the whips. The finished objects are finished. I'm going to wear the vest Claire next week. So I'll be able to really show it off for you then, although you should have seen the before and after blocking here. And hopefully by then I'll also have addressed the Tulsa finishes, or at least by then it should just be blocked and ready to address. And the only other plan that I have for the week is probably to cast on another one of my summer knitting projects. The fall inspiration is creeping in, and I'm just trying to hold strong to get through my last 2 summer projects that I know I won't get to wear a ton before the season's over, but honestly, I'll be very happy to have them waiting for me next summer. And that's just gonna have to be okay. I do have one acquisition. I'm gonna have to run and grab it really quick. So I've been using the Eucalyptus wool wash to block my projects, and I really love it in the eucalyptus scent. It's very fresh, very clean. And I ran out, so I went to go purchase them, and they do like the very small 3-ounce bottles and the 16-ounce bottles. And obviously, the bigger bottle you buy, the more savings there are. And so I was just looking at all of my options when I saw that the biggest bottle was on sale on Amazon. So I grabbed it because I figured I'm going to use it, but it was a big purchase. So here we have my wool wash. Yeah, I grabbed the actual jug of the wool wash. I could tell you, it's heavy. So this is the 4-liter jug, which original full price is $80, and it was on sale for $56.83. So I picked it up. I'll try to link it below. I'm planning to just pour this into a little like soap dispenser so that I just always have it ready to go. And I know I'll use this. It's just going to take some time. So I was happy to buy the big old jug because the next size down is the 16 ounce, and that one is about $18 for the bottle. So for about $50, this seems like a much better deal. Yeah, really, really glad that I was able to get my hands on that. And now I don't have to worry about wool wash for a little bit too. So yeah, that's my acquisition. See, wasn't that relaxing? We're back home. We're back home. We're cozy. I would really love to know, are you in summer knitting mode still, or have you moved into your fall knitting? Let me know. I am so curious. And a reminder again, I don't want you to miss out on the deals. So just a reminder that Veronica Lindbergh, Kutova Kika, has offered my subscribers a 50% discount on all of her patterns using the code Nora, capital N, lowercase ORA, and you can use that code up until August 31st on any of her patterns in her Ravelry or web shop. Just know that it's good for a cart full of patterns, so you can't use the code twice on Ravelry or twice on her web shop. It's a one-time use on each, so if you don't pick up all of the patterns you want on Ravelry, you can pop over to her web shop and use the code again, but you can purchase a full cart's worth of patterns with the code. So I just want to make sure that you guys use that while it's still good. I get nothing for you using the code. That was just something generous that she offered to help us celebrate the 10K subscribers. So I just want to make sure to remind you until that code is no longer good to use. And with that, I'm done. I am all done for the day. It's actually been a pretty long day of knitting and getting all of the before and after blocking shots done and weaving in ends. And so I've kind of been working since early this morning on just getting this video together. So that's okay, but I'm going to go spend the rest of my day knitting outside, and I hope you get a chance to do that as well. If you enjoyed this video, I would so appreciate it if you would go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you subscribe and you ring the bell, then you're going to be notified anytime I post a new video. But I do post podcast videos just like this one every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I'm grateful that you've joined me here today, and I hope to see you again next week. Big ol' thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right, guys. Bye.